Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. Joining me today is my friend Bree Woolard. We had Bree on the podcast a little over a year ago, and we discussed a very different topic at the time. Today we're actually discussing one of her more recent series, which she called 50 First Dates. This was a little TikTok series she did that ended up getting picked up on the news. She went on 50, well, not quite 50, I guess I can't say that, first dates, and kind of learned a lot about love and relationships, and maybe ended up in one herself from that series. So we talk a lot about health and relationships and that sort of thing today, or a little different content than usual from me, but I think it's a good one. I think it's a good little change up, good little something different. I think you're going to love this episode. And obviously, it's hard not to like anything that Bree does. She is an amazing person. Enjoy. Bree, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a year, I think, since our last one. It's exciting to rip another one with you here. Thanks for being here.
Has it been a year?
I think it's been a while. Yeah, I think it has.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. I love chatting and especially about what we're talking about today. So excited.
For sure, for sure. I know you and I have had the pleasure of getting to know each other quite a bit over the past year. I know we've had a lot of kind of random phone calls at different times about different things. But for people who might not know you quite as well as I do, what can you tell them about yourself? Who is Bree Woolard?
That's an excellent question. It's changing every day, this identity. So essentially, I'm from Toronto. I'm 25. Just to get the administrative stuff out of the way. I moved to Calgary recently. And yeah, I started out in Deloitte in consulting, and it just like was not my thing after school. I went kind of a business route and then really asked myself some tough questions if this is what I wanted to do. And then after that, I pivoted fully into social media worlds. I went content creator, influencer route. It's been an absolute whirlwind, experiencing all the ups and downs of that massive lifestyle career change. And I really just wanted to have more of a voice just in the world in general, not only in a career. I wanted to inspire people. I really wanted to get that, to fulfill that dream of doing that. So since then, since 2022, I went to Thailand, had a big breakup, and kind of shared that story, and that really launched that persona online. And where are we now? Now I'm in Toronto again. Like I said, I've got these massive backpacks behind me because I'm getting ready for another trip with a new boyfriend. It's just like, what the heck? We have so many, I think, things to unpack with this story. But essentially, yeah, I'm just taking everything day by day and following what feels right. And I love sharing that story online. And so you can follow me, and I'm sure we'll have in the show notes, where you can find me if you want to hear all the details from now till then, then till now.
Of course, of course. And there's certainly a lot to unpack, both, literally and figuratively for you lately. I think the last time we chatted on a podcast, anyways, was right around the time that you had gotten back from Thailand and you had just
Yeah.
kind of like disappeared for a few months and experienced a different part of the world. And then I think around that time as well, you started a series online where you were doing like, what was it, 50 First Dates, I think it was?
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, but it didn't quite make it to 50, did it, Bree?
We didn't quite get there. We at least ended on like a round number, like one of the tens. So yeah, I guess yeah, we would have chatted summer 2022, which was also like a crazy time. Just so much had transpired, and got back from Thailand. 5 days later, I'm suddenly single, jobless. I'm like, what the heck am I gonna do? And so I'm just like, let's have some fun. Let's just like, let's to move on from my breakup. I just want to like start dating again and like build a whole series around it. Got on the news, picked it up. Like it really took off. And it was so fun, like just meeting people and figuring out what I want in a partner, and, the whole dating thing again. And it lightened the situation. Instead of feeling like dating was a chore, it was like, let's just build like have some more fun with it, just lighten the mood. And then where were we? August of 2023. After an 8-month situationship, I was like, I need to get over this man because it didn't work out. We can dive into more of that later. That's just the prologue, if you will. But then I went back on the apps and I said I want to go on a date, like just a fun random date. And it's when you're least expecting it. So that was date number 40. We made things official a month later. It's like, well, I guess the series is not ending. It's pivoting, if you will.
There you go. There you go. A
Yeah.
whole new chapter of life. As you were talking, you mentioned that you felt like at one point dating was like a chore or something that you have to do. And I feel like that's something I hear from a lot of people in today's day and age. They almost feel like their relationship is almost like a to-do list kind of thing, or getting to know someone is almost like a checklist. Like, do you know these things? Have you met the parents? Have you met the family? All these different things. And it's kind of enlightening to me, anyways, to hear that that's not the case for every individual. And that's not how it always has to be, because plain and simple, I think it should just kind of develop organically and naturally. And I don't think it should feel scripted. I don't think it should feel forced. And above all, I don't think there's really one right or wrong way to do it. I feel like whatever works for you at the end of the day.
Totally, totally. And we're in like a checklist based society, it feels now. We've over time, like just with the amount of to-dos a human has in a given day, it feels like dating has become one of those to-dos, right? And we absorb content where we see people day in the life vlogs, and it's like, okay, part of my day is going on Hinge or going on Tinder, going on these apps. And yeah, it's as soon as you can take that stress, like that mental baggage away that says like this is something I have to do versus something I get to do. That's with everything. We were, I think, chatting on our last podcast about, I get to work out. I get to do these things. I get to go to work. As soon as you can frame it like that, it's exciting. And it feels less of a let me go on and do my swiping today. And, I think with the development of these apps, and they've kind of taken over. And I've listened, I've absorbed so much content in the past year as I was on them and I was talking about them and I was really immersed in this ecosystem of online dating. It's like they can be a tool, but use them, don't abuse them, if you will. Like and that's how I met my person, was on Hinge, but it was in a way that I wasn't scrolling every day. I actually just opened the app for the first time in 8 months and went into it with just a much lighter feeling. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm kind of going on a weird tangent here, but I think these apps can be helpful, but don't rely on them to find your person, kind of thing,
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you feel like you developed a lighter sense or a lighter feel in the dating world, Bree? Because I feel like that's something a lot of people struggle with as well. Like, we take things very seriously, like I might look at it and say like, hey, I'm 26 now, like, clock is kind of ticking. I need to find someone soon. Like, how do you kind of look at your situation, take a step back and find a way to make light of it, if that makes sense?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think as you're asking this question, I'm thinking of where this all started for me. Like, this kind of, it wasn't my own, like one day I woke up and I'm like, everything's light now, like it was a buildup of people I've been listening to and resources I've been absorbing. Like, I read the book Attached, which was really good, but I think the one relationship nugget of advice that I took, it wasn't actually related to relationships. It's from one of my favorite podcasts, The Mindset Mentor with Rob Dial. And he said, if you can think of life as a game, everything changes. Like, truly, we're just all trying to do our best, and think of it less as like, I have to do these things in order to feel happy, in order to have success in my life. Like, you have to get the car, the partner, the kids. Think of it as a game. Like, we're all just like in this, almost like, he just framed it as that. And that was really helpful for me. Another thing that's going around to kind of maybe open it up to, I mean, there's Gen Z slang. We know that, right? And there's one kind of thing going around in Gen Z slang right now. It's do it for the plot. Like, I love that. I eat that up. It's like, it just feels like so much lighter. You're like, oh, I don't know about this guy. He's kind of like, if you're talking to your friend, you're showing this man you might want to go on a date with, or a partner, I should open it up. It's the person you want to go on a date with. And they're like, I don't know. He's like, he lives over here and he has this job that I don't know about. Do it for the plot. Like, you never know. You never know where the plot will lead you. And I just love this mindset that's going around. And I think taking in what I heard from Rob about life being a game, and then just doing it for like, just taking the seriousness out of it. That's when I think you feel lighter about things, but also you give off an energy that is lighter and more spontaneous and less administrative. Like, I have to be doing this, right? Like, I think the partner I'm with now, he noticed that. I went on this date with him, this first date, being like, I don't care. I don't care about dating. Like, I just want to be myself. I don't care what he thinks. I don't care what the outcome is. And so I think this whole game mindset, this whole do it for the plot mindset is it's totally taking away the outcome of what you get out of these situations, and just being really present with that person and saying, I'm here, we're at brunch, or we're getting drinks, and that's all that matters. I'm not thinking about, we have a tendency to think about what our kids are going to look like when we're on our first date. Like, I think that that can happen, but it's like, just be in the moment and just do it for the plot. Just be in the moment and take out the stress of what the outcome's going to be.
You see, that to me, my generation, that was like the term full send or YOLO. But for the plot, I'll have to write that down. It's interesting because, like you mentioned, we tend to go on, the date or whatever that way, and we tend to focus on those end goals, the big picture things. And I think a lot of times we end up missing what happens in the moment as a result. I think you're right about that. And it sounds like, at least in your case, you being less serious or just more focused on what's going on in the moment actually allowed you to kind of develop something more serious, if that makes sense. Like, taking a step back from the big picture end goal, what's going to happen in 5 years, and focusing on the present moment actually enabled you to lead to something that will actually have an impact in 5 years.
Totally. And I have a friend right now who's very frustrated with dating, and how she's describing to me what she's feeling. And I'm wondering if what you're describing now, I like to paint the picture and have like a visual in mind, right? Like, you're on a first date with someone, and let's say I am straight. So I like to talk about straight cis relationships. That's kind of just what I know. And so let's imagine there's like a man and a woman, and the woman just wants, like, she's focused on finding her person. Like, she's focused on, I'm dating for the outcome of finding a boyfriend, finding a partner. Like, all my friends are in relationships, and they go into this date with this kind of like angst and frustration, and they're just like, that energy is radiating. Like, the person on the other side of the table, even if you think you're saying things that are spontaneous in the moment, like, it's coming out. That energy is being put out in this dynamic with this other person. And the man maybe doesn't want to continue. He gets a little freaked out by this energy. But if you flip it and you take out the outcome, you take out where it's going to go, the vibe totally changes. And I just think it's really hard to do that in today's day and age, when we're now getting, like, all my friends are getting into our late 20s. Some people are married, some people are single, some people are traveling, some people have a home with their person. And you can't assign that timeline for yourself, because then, yeah, you're just focused on that outcome. I think if you can just eliminate the outcome in these date situations, everything changes. It's just off the shoulders,
Not to mention, if you focus exclusively on the outcome, what happens when you get to a certain point and you haven't met that outcome? I'd imagine that would become kind of strenuous or strainful, or lead to a little bit of personal anxiety for yourself. If you're like, hey, look, I've got this whole big life plan. I want to be married by 28, kids by 30, move into a new house by 32, and then you find yourself there at 30 and you don't even have your person yet. I think if you hold yourself very rigid into those things, it can create a more detrimental situation for yourself. Whereas if you're more fluid and go with the flow and kind of figure it out as you go, that stress is lifted, as you've been saying.
100%. And if you've ever heard someone say, like, I can't imagine I'm here, this would have never happened if I didn't do X, Y, Z, or that this wouldn't have happened if you know what I mean? Like, there's beautiful things can happen being spontaneous. It's almost like there's anxiety in both situations. There's the anxiety of holding on to an outcome that may never be reached, and there's the anxiety of the unknown. But the unknown can be a really beautiful place, and it's almost like you feel that fear of, I don't know where I'm going to be at 30. I don't know if I'm going to have a partner. Like, that's anxiety inducing too, but it's almost like it enables you to find a healthier place in the future with your mindset about it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I realized that, as we're talking here, Bree, you went on 40 first dates in a very short amount of time. So you got to kind of see and experience a lot of different things in a very short amount of time. What kind of things did you notice just from like your experience trend wise amongst, individuals who are very much like, hey, look, this is what I want, bam, 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 check the boxes kind of thing, versus those that were more free spirited and went with the flow?
Wow. Yeah, I'm like recapping where well, I looked off into the distance because I like 2022 just like flashed before my eyes. I think it's exactly what I was describing to you in that first date situation, but I
Right.
was on the receiving end, and I was on the receiving end of this energy, and I'm a spontaneous individual. Some people want to have that conversation early on, but the that energy has to be matched. And I think I felt more just youthful and happy and present when I was with someone who was not attaching an outcome themselves to what was going to happen. Like it just, yeah, it's just so much to recap. Like what I felt in my bones when someone was doing this as a chore and someone was just here for a good time.
Right, right. The difference between someone who's just there and those that are there genuinely. And I think that's
Hmm.
something that, in today's day and age, it's really difficult, I find, to find the genuine side of things.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is there have been multiple times where I felt a very strong pull towards a girl, and it's just like it's like a blinding kind of feeling. Like there's nothing that compares to it, and you're just willing to like give up everything that you've ever done for someone, if that makes sense.
Like you don't it's so interesting to hear this because I don't hear this perspective very often. That's so incredible. Do you feel like though you're still maintaining things that are important to you in all this?
I think it's a balance. I think it's got to be a game of give and take, Bree. And I could be wrong about this, but I think ultimately you have to find a way to balance what you want to do with what the other person wants to do as well. It's never a one-way street, or it shouldn't be a one-way street. I think life's a game of give and take. And ultimately, I think you gotta kind of gotta find that happy medium.
Yeah, no, and you brought up a great point. Like I had one of my good friends, he's a little older, he's been through a couple more relationships, and he said, think of it like a Venn diagram. Like you've got your circle, you've got your individual circles, and actually the place that you cross is like this in like a little slice in the middle. And I think that's a big difference. Like if we step away from the first dates and that kind of like dating period more into serious relationship where I am now, like I've been so communicative with my partner to say like I have all these things going on. Like you met me at a time where my career is like I'm so busy. Like I'm so busy. I'm about to travel like the world basically and there's just so much happening. I need to maintain these things in order for this to be a healthy relationship. And I think like just breaking down the wall of thinking that you know what they're feeling and making these assumptions about how it's going and just saying like this is a thing that's important to me. You can like almost like take it or leave it. Like we're adults, we have to be mature about this, and I think you're so right. It's balanced, a little bit of compromise, but mainly just maintaining what's important to you as well. I think is huge.
How do you go about determining those things that are important to you and those that you're willing to kind of flex and bend with? Because at least for myself, I've found in the past that I'm willing to flex and bend on a lot of things for the right person. And when it's not the right person, I'm willing to flex very, very little. And I almost use that as kind of like a personal litmus test on how much I'm genuinely interested in someone, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point, and I feel like I'm answering all your questions with some kind of reference or like a footnote here, but I've done a lot of work on like my own mental health and my own just capacity to understand these things, and I'm happy to share that with you and with your audience. And my therapist told me something where it's exactly this, and she said build a list, and it was actually in a time between my last relationship and before I was starting dating again. I think that's the ideal time to do this exercise where you don't have a bias towards someone and what you're willing to compromise on. She said, build a list and call it, make a little T chart and have one side say negotiable or non-negotiables, the other side negotiables. And really think about when you don't have anyone else in your mind. That's why it's best to do this when you're like totally single, like you don't have a partner, you don't have anyone you're really seeing. Build a list of things like when you close your eyes and say, what are things that I'm not willing to negotiate on? Like I am not willing to negotiate on, for example, I just can't be with someone who smokes. Like I don't know what it is. I think in my last relationship it was a big thing and it brought a lot of anxiety and it just I can't see them doing it. I can't. And so that was on my non-negotiable side. And then there's a negotiable side where I'm like, okay, you know what? I think it could be nice if we wake up at the same time and we have like a morning routine, but I don't care. They can wake up at 8, 9 o'clock and I'd still be the same, as I'd still be as into them as I am, even if I'm waking up at 6 to go do my workout class. You know what? So building a list of things that you're like, absolutely not, this has to like not be there. And okay, I'm willing to bend. And then if you, that as you go into dating, you have a framework. So if I meet someone and they say like, and they pull out a cigarette, I'm like, you know, I don't know if this is gonna work. I know that's kind of a, it's different for everyone. This list will look different for everyone, but it really objectively identifies, this is what I value, and this is what I'm willing to compromise on, right? And I have this friend who she has a very specific criteria of what she wants, and I'm trying to broaden her horizons to be like, well, maybe if they're like 6'1" instead of 6'2", like that, they could still have a great character. So it's just opening it up, but really standing your ground, and then you don't feel like you're losing yourself as a part of getting into a relationship with someone else. You really want to make sure you're still holding your values true, even if a part of you changes. It's just like, what parts are you willing to kind of adapt and change?
Right. So you have your priorities straight yourself. You have things that you want to see in someone else. You have things that you value and that you're looking for. But by the same token, you need to take all of that and be able to step back from it in a situation to make sure that you don't become so hyper fixated on that you miss little things in the moment.
Exactly. And you know what? As we're talking about it, I'm going to make a little full circle moment here to come back to my 51st date series. And, you know, all these 40 dates, I think another way to lighten the situation is to go into dating as like an experiment. Do it as like an inventory. I know it sounds weird, like you might meet your person along the way, but treat first dates as like, I'm just learning. I'm learning what I like that negotiable and non-negotiable list. I also have an ick list from this experience. Like, you're just collecting data on what you want and what you don't want. I think that can really help lighten the mood. I totally missed that mood lightening in our topic earlier, but it really helps to say, like, you treat dating as a way to learn what you like and what you don't like. And if someone, the man I'm with now, truly has met all these things and then some, you know, like it just, but I hadn't that understanding going in of what I was looking for and kind of what I value. And he's like naturally checked off so many boxes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that. And I think that's important as well, is kind of taking the time to actually get to know someone early on, what they value, who they are, where they came from. Because I feel like in today's day and age, things are very superficial. And there's never, or at least it's extremely rare to find some of that deeper connection and that deeper interest. So I definitely echo your point on the importance of digging in a little bit deeper and really getting to know someone. And I found that it's incredible what you can find out about someone and hear from someone in just a matter of minutes if you ask the right questions. And one of the go-to questions that I've held on to for a number of situations, and this is broader than just, you know, possible relationship, but if you really want to get to know what someone values, ask them what their perfect day looks like. And you can
ask, I love that question.
you can ask it in, you know, work context or day off weekend context or whatever, but have someone describe what a perfect day looks like and actually pay attention to what they say and listen and, you know, take your little mental notes, because if you find out what someone values on their perfect day, then I feel like the rest of, you know, that's a deeper look into them than anyone else is going to get. And that's going to kind of tell you yourself, going back to your Venn diagrams, where theirs overlap with yours.
Exactly. Wow, I love that. It's so funny. I do the same thing. I call it the perfect Tuesday. Tuesday is such a random day in the week. Like, it's not quite Monday, it's not Saturday, but it's a Tuesday. It's like, whoa, what does your Tuesday look like? I think it's also a great first date or a great get to know someone exercise, because there's so much you can pull out when they explain a day. You can say, oh, why are you having a vegan lunch? Tell me about that. Or why do you want to be, you know, why do you want to watch the sunset? Is that something, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that you can pull out from that story as well, that like you branch off the small talk into every different direction you can go. Yeah.
Right, right. It's one of those things. I call it like peeling back the layers of an onion. You can literally just ask why or what or how over and over and over again and really dig in deep. And I've also found that someone's willingness to open up to those kind of things can say a lot about them as well. There are certain individuals out there who are going to open up very quickly, and some that kind of have walls built up and they're a little more quiet at first. And ultimately, I don't think it's like our place to judge that. I just think there's a lot of people out there that have gone through a lot of different things. And for some of them, they're just a little bit more guarded and reserved at first. And, ultimately, they might have been through something in the past that hurt them. And it's not my place to critique them for it.
Yeah. No, totally. And I think that's this whole topic on, it's another, I don't know if it's Gen Z slang or just dating slang at this point, but the slow burn, like where they're reserved on the first date, but you're like, okay, I kind of like the vibes. It's like, even if the first date isn't sparkly and, elaborate and just like everything you ever dreamed of, but you're into the person, you want more, go on a second date. I've been on some beautiful second and third dates where you're like, who is this? Like almost like a new person comes out, and it's like, and then you really learn about them. And I think as you get more comfortable, and the people I've been, I think, the most interested in talking to again are people who have showed an authentic side. Like I think you're so right when you said we live in this kind of superficial world. We see social media, we see this highlight reel, and we think we have to maintain this facade. We have to maintain this, filter as we go on. But the reason I think I've clicked so well with this man is since day one, I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna I had I think guacamole falling on me on our first date. I was just like, I literally don't care what you think of me. And he's like, that's what I like the most about you. And it's like when you show this side, it's like it unlocks something so new, because then both parties feel comfortable to open up. It's like, oh, I'm so glad you shared. I had no idea your parents were divorced. Like, so are mine. And you just it unlocks a whole new deeper connection. And then that's when I think relationships can be the most, at least, meaningful. Yeah.
What do you say to someone who's having a difficult time hitting that level of vulnerability or openness?
Like if I'm on a date and I feel
Or if
like
say one of your friends, like you mentioned a couple specific examples earlier, say one of them is saying, look, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you're just present in the moment. I don't know how you can, be, sitting across from someone and, food's going all over the place and you just don't care. Like,
yeah.
how do you get to that level of just extreme disconnect, I'll call it, from what we consider normal dating?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination of everything we've kind of touched on, like releasing the outcome, doing it for the plot, like all these things. I'm going to give you kind of a boring answer, but I think it's a muscle that has to be worked. And I don't think it's going to come one day you don't just wake up and you're suddenly this new character on a date, unless you're traveling and you want to come up with a fake persona and do all that stuff. But been there, done that. But
story for another time.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think it's just a muscle that has to be worked. And I think after these 40 dates, I was like, dating is actually just so chill, and it doesn't have to be a chore. And all you're doing is just meeting people. Just think of it as you're just getting, you're just having a dinner with someone new. And it's just a memory, you're just building up this inventory of memories and experiences, whether you're with someone who you just met. And I think something else I can say, a little mantra that I like to keep throughout dating, is there's no such thing as bad dates, just funny stories, right? If you try to open up to someone and they get kind of weird and they go on this tangent about whatever, and you're like, this was super weird. It's just a story. It's just a memory that you capture in this lifetime. And it's less of in the moment, I have to say the right things, and more so what can happen if I say this? But I think for a tangible example of how to get there, it's okay, you go on a date, you feel like you've kept this front on and you didn't open up in the way you wanted to. Maybe go on a second date with that person, and just, if there's an opening in the conversation, you feel you can be a little more vulnerable, test that vulnerability. Right? I post a lot of vulnerable content online, and I think that was something that I did to kind of make a little analogy here. Being vulnerable online is very difficult. It's similar in these situations where you're vulnerable to another person, except it's being blasted to an audience of 100,000 people. I tested my vulnerability that way. I said, okay, well, let's talk about a topic that's maybe a little more controversial. And then you slowly kind of build up your tolerance for opening up to someone new until you're like, LOL, I don't care. This is me.
I like that. I like that. And I've certainly seen that reflected in your content as well there, Bree. I feel like I've got to address an elephant in the room though. Earlier you mentioned that you have like a ick list, and you mentioned that there's no such thing as a bad date, just funny stories. But I have a just a feeling that there's been one or two that really stuck with you, and not for the good.
You are absolutely right. Yep. There's a couple. There's a couple. What do you want to know?
Whatever story sticks with you the most first, give me that one.
Like a full, I could take you on like a journey, or I
Oh,
could give
let's dive in.
you spark notes. Yeah, so this one, I actually posted a whole video about it on my TikTok. It would have been a while ago, but I met this guy at Stampede and Calgary Stampede. So it's just this, everyone's got a different character going on. Like, talk about different personas. Like, they're not, people aren't the same at Stampede as they are the other 355 days of the year. So essentially, this guy, we had two stepped a little bit, and it was just a Stampede interaction. And I said, oh, I'm moving to Calgary 2 months from now, whatever. So I get to Calgary, he's like, let's go on that date. So I meet this man and we go on a hike. So first date, hike date.
Is that a green flag or a red flag?
It's a beige flag, I'd say. It's somewhere in the middle. It's like, I was so new to Alberta. I just moved from Toronto to Alberta, and I was just like, I'm so ready to go to the mountains. And I didn't even process like this could be a sketchy thing. I did my due diligence on him. Like, I knew he was like, I've met him already. We had chatted, like everything seemed fine. I had like my friends shared my location with like 17 people. And so we get to this hike, and it was like a 20, I think it was like a 24-kilometer hike. Like, we were hiking for hours, and I don't know what, I was like, the adrenaline was going through me. I was like, we were chatting, chatting, chatting. And then I think as the date went on, I just like, you can learn a lot about someone in 6 hours. So things started coming out, and I was like, okay, more beige flags were coming up just in what we were saying. And so the date just like didn't end there. Like, 6 hours hiking up a mountain was not enough. And so I just was like trying to get a read on this man, and I couldn't quite get it. Then we went shopping. We got some home goods. It was like a marathon date, and they never say these end well. But anyways, all the crazy story events happened in the evening. So I can't feel my legs, first of all. I'm just like, I'm ready for bed. He's like, do you want to go out tonight? I'm like, oh my God. So we basically, as we're coming back into Calgary, he said, send me a photo of your outfit so we can match. I was like, we're gonna match. Like, is this a wedding you're taking me to? What are we doing? Is this prom? And so we go to this, I think he wanted to try to do it. So we'd get stamps for this busy bar, and then we'd go to a fancy dinner, and then we'd come back to the kind of like bar situation. And so we got these stamps. The plan failed completely. We ended up like, picture this, like dressed to the nines, suit and tie he was in. I was in like a full-on dress and heels. We looked like we just come out of like an ad. And we were sitting at this bar that was like, tequila was spilled on the table, like everyone around us was drunk, and we just looked like we came out of a wedding. It was like, what's going on? And then he's like, I really want to get into this fancy place. So we go to back to this fancy place, this dinner that he tried to get into earlier. Sorry, I'm dragging this out. It was a marathon of a day, if you can't tell. And he's just like trying to get us into this really nice rooftop bar. And they're like, we have no space for the night. We have no space for the night. And so we keep trying. I'm sitting here like, I just want to go home. I'm so tired. And he goes up to the host stand one more time. He goes, ma'am, this is my girlfriend of 5 years. We need to get into this bar. And so suddenly I am this man's girlfriend, like serious relationship. He's got hand on the small of the back. But not only was that information with the host at the downstairs, it was relayed to the rest of the staff. So suddenly it's this big celebration for our 5-year anniversary. It was wild. And guess who paid for the dinner at the rooftop? This girl. The whole thing.
We have a lot to unpack there.
We have a lot to unpack, but essentially that was probably one of the most chaotic dates. We did not go on a second date. It was just a funny story. That's honestly probably my craziest story. And there was even more that unfolded within those moments, but just a lot.
Yeah. Wow. So first off, don't drag out a first date across like 12 plus hours. I feel like there's like a happy medium. Like,
yeah,
you mentioned before about like exercising things like a muscle, and I feel like that holds true with like the dating world. Is like you kind of need a minute to step back and process things at first.
Yeah.
And if you throw too much at it right from the start, you don't have that opportunity to step back like we talked about earlier. You don't have the opportunity to think about what's going on, and things just kind of keep happening. So I think that's interesting. Second off, maybe it's just me, but I don't really like the whole concept of lying in any situation. So I don't think that like I'm not going to answer for you, but the whole concept of like I'm going to tell a white lie to get something to happen that I want to happen, like if you're willing to do that in a situation like that, when else are you going to do that, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I didn't even
And
think of that.
and third, maybe it's just me being me, but I am really, really bad about letting a girl pay. Like, I'm not going to doubt her financial ability. She's probably independent. She can probably pay on her own. I'm not going to doubt that, but I just feel like, and maybe this is just a me thing, I feel like there's something about like, if you're the guy in this situation, I feel like you're almost like obligated to pay for the first date or the second date or both for that matter.
No, you pull out a lot of interesting things I'd never considered, like the character reveal of what like where else is he gonna say these little white lies? That's so true. I was just so delusional at that point. I was kind of laughing about it all. Like it was hilarious. But yeah, it's super fair. And I think that the paying on the first date has become a conversation. Like when I was interviewed about this series on the news, that was kind of what they were getting at, is like they were asking me a lot about with inflation, like with just the rise and cost of everything, are you splitting dates more than you used to? And I think it's a conversation worth having, especially if you're going on a second, third, fourth date. Like I think splitting it halfway is fun, or even one and one kind of thing, like can happen over time. But it was just, yeah, you're right. Like with this situation, he was like, I want to take, if someone says, I want to take you here, it's also the language, right? Like it's the language you use going into it. If a guy says, I want to take you out, it's almost like the unspoken expectation is they're willing to kind of, they're taking you out, right? Whereas if it's like, I would like would you like to go on a date with me, that's a little more open. Maybe we talk about, if it's a big elaborate date, maybe you split it, I don't know. But yeah, it's also just chivalry, it's almost like there is chivalry, I don't think is totally dead. But with the times we're in financially, like I think it's more of a conversation than it used to be about like, what are we doing with the bill, kind of thing. Just
Yeah,
being devil's advocate there.
yeah. No, I'm here for it, and I think ultimately it has to be a respectful conversation, and
Totally.
that's where I think a lot of things can get lost as well.
Mhm.
Is there's, and maybe this is just me observing. I feel like the respect level that a lot of people have for others has gone down. People
Mhm.
forget that they're talking with another person, and they kind of look at things differently. And again, this is just a personal observation, but I feel like if you keep that level of respect and show someone that you care and show someone that you value them, I think that goes a long way.
Mhm. 1,000%. Like when as we're speaking, it's like as you mentioned that it feels like that the how respect is diminishing has come from these apps. Like how we can just swipe, and we can talk, we can ghost people like we never have been able to before. Like we don't have to answer if we're not interested. And I think that's starting to come out in person too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's just, again, it's that muscle where to tap in and say, okay, like, am I into this person, and how can I actively show that I'm into what's happening, and how can I actively tell them, like vocalize, like I really like spending time with you, I want to keep going, or like I can't pay for this dinner tonight, can we do something else? Like vocalize is huge.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And if you find something worth pursuing, I say pursue it with everything you have as well. Like for you, you stopped after date 40 because you kind of found your person. You didn't finish the series when you knew you had your person. You're
Yeah.
like, look, this is where we need to be. We're stopping here. I think that's another lost art in today's day and age. And I'll call it loyalty, for lack of a better way to put it, is once you find someone that you're interested in, you stop there. Like you don't keep searching.
Yeah.
Like if you go on the app and you find who you're after, like you stop there. You don't keep going on the app. Or at least I think there's a difference between those that keep going and those that don't.
Yeah. And you know what? It's so true. It's an amazing point. And it's almost like there's two avenues you can go after you meet someone. And I think with the apps, again, another podcaster I listen to, Tinks is her name. A lot of it, she's kind of like female empowerment. She says the apps are giving this mindset. They're infusing this mindset into us. That's the there's something more mindset, right? You're like, this person's great. And so one avenue is, okay, yeah, he's 6 feet, but maybe I can find a 6'2" man. You know what I mean? That's my one friend's example of the height thing. But it's like there's that, but there's another avenue where you can peel back those layers of the onion, like you were saying. You can dive deeper into one thing. It's almost like in anything in life, it's like you focus your energy into one thing, it actually can become something beautiful. If you focus all your time and energy into your YouTube career, that can become huge, versus if you do a bunch of little things here and there, right? Like it's jack of all trades versus, I don't know if this analogy is making sense, but it's same with dating. Like try to explore, even if someone only has 75% of what you're looking for in a person, the other 25% could be revealed in a whole new way. So instead of thinking there's something more within other people, it's like there could be something more within this one person that I'm exploring. And let me just like stay here for a little bit. But it's really hard when we have access to hundreds of people on our phones. Like these apps are honestly, like I said, I did find my person through it kind of randomly, spontaneously, but I think just living your life in a way that is true to you. You could bump into your person at the grocery store. You could bump into your person at the class you went to, and that's I'm tangenting. This is a rant. I could have ended it a couple sentences ago, but I hope you see what I mean.
I see what you mean. And, I got to ask too, I feel like the dating world is evolving with the use of the cell phone, like texting, phone calls, FaceTime, all these different things. How do you feel, at least for yourself, how do you feel the cell phone enhances or hinders your dating life? Like, where's the line with text message versus like just using text to, make in-person plans? Like, where do you kind of see that balance coming in?
I'd say just get in person as much as possible. We spend so much time in front of a screen, so much time. Like, I truly think, okay, I think this is how it should go. You're on the apps. Let's say we're using the apps because that is where a lot of people are meeting nowadays. I think Hinge should be a tool to do your like very administrative due diligence, like make sure this person isn't a huge red flag. If you're vibing in the Hinge chat, maybe talk for like, keep it as short as possible. If it can be done in 24 hours, get like just are they a normal person? Is this something worth pursuing? Here's my number. Let's make a date plan. Or let's make a date plan from, yeah, I'd say get the number, get off the app, and like plan a date maybe later that week. Like I think if you're really into what's happening, don't waste time. Like I once had a guy, this is ridiculous. I once had a guy say, I kind of hinted I wanted to get off the app. And I'm like, let's go on a date. But I said, oh, I'm not really much into like messaging on Hinge. Like I was trying to word it in a way that was subtle. And he goes, would you like to message on Instagram instead? It's like, no, that's not what I was going with. Like, what? And it was immediate ghosting. So I think it's like, just get in person as much as possible. That's how you really get to know someone. If I can share another example with my own, like my relationship now, how we are like with texting, I cannot believe how well it's going. Like, first of all, we didn't follow each other on social media. We're maintaining a very anonymous social media life, which is pretty cool. He's in Prague right now. So we met and then we both had plans to go to Europe in the same time frame. It was very weird. And so, but his trip started a month before mine. So we've kind of been long distance. It was like we met, we made it official, and then long distance. It's weird. And big time change too between us. And I sat him down one day. I'm like, this is too hard. Like, I just met you. And I think sometimes texting a lot can get lost in communication. And that's why I don't like it. So it's like a lot, you could say something and they could interpret it totally differently when they're reading words on a screen versus a phone call. So I said to my boyfriend, I said, can we just text to like arrange a call? Like instead of texting you all day, because I'm working on my phone, he's working, why don't we just like send, if something cool happens, like send me a fun little update. We call them updates. It's totally like a totally different style of texting. We're not like texting throughout the day. I think it just kind of wastes time that you could be with other people in person. It's like use your phone as a way to arrange plans, arrange things. And with my boyfriend now, I say, why don't we just call every other day and do all of our talking in like an hour? And then it's more personal. It's like a phone call. This is a long distance situation, but I still think that's how it can work. But just use your phone to arrange plans and maybe share something fun that happened that day, but don't use it as a way to communicate constantly. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, and the distance thing definitely throws a little bit of like a curveball into it as well. But that's interesting. I like that concept of essentially using the text to arrange the things that are more meaningful and impactful. I forget the stat right off the top of my head, but I believe it basically says that the majority of how we communicate is actually our body language. So like right now, you and I, we're sitting across from each other. We can see how we move, see me going crazy with my hands. That is the majority of communication. And the whole verbal thing is kind of the next in line. And the text part of it is the lowest down the totem pole. So it's like, look, if I want to know someone better, I need to try and find ways and pursue ways to get to the top part of it, which is the in-person. And if I can't do that, then I have to go for the next lowest hanging fruit, which is going to be the FaceTimes, the phone calls, that sort of thing. And it's one of those things, I feel like if you find the right person, you find a way to make it work. Like, you mentioned in your case, like, you're kind of in a relocation phase and different things like that. Like, you're not going for what's convenient with the guy right down the road. Like, it's one of those things you will adjust what you are doing in order to fit the situation at hand.
1,000%. You summarized that beautifully. I feel like I totally ADHD tangent, and then you're like, here's everything you wanted to say in a nice little summary, nice little pieces. It's so true. Like, use your phone to just arrange things, get in person. It's how you can really know someone. And we have such little in-person time. Like, even you and I we're as in person as we can be because we're in different parts of North America. But yeah, it's so true. Like, just get in person. And I think don't take it personally. If someone communicates, like, a big difference from my last relationship to this one is I would self-sabotage everything that he was asking for. Like, he'd say, I can't text you today. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being annoying. I am being this like annoying girlfriend. He's going to break up. Like, it was that anxiety right from like the littlest piece of information. And it just blew up into this, like, I am the worst. I am the worst. I'm the worst. In this relationship, it's like, no, he's saying he can't text right now because he has a meeting, and that's totally normal and fine. And I think it's these hard wirings that have happened to us as like children that come into these relationships, right? But it's like, how can we rewire and say, nope, don't take it personally. It's just something that the other person needs. And that's, I think, where what differentiates a healthy relationship from a relationship that has a lot of unknowns and assumptions and unspoken, feelings that are happening. So it's just tell the person what you need and respect that in the best way you can. But like, for example, I'd say, can we call every third day? He's like, that's not quite enough for me. Let's do every other day. Right. So
Right.
yeah, you just find a middle ground.
Right. You find a middle ground. And ultimately, the one thing that I feel like we haven't discussed yet, and I think this is arguably the most important, is if you are going to enter the dating world or search for, whoever your quote unquote person is in life, I feel like you need to be the best version of yourself that you can be, or maybe not the best, but you need to be actively working towards it and taking steps to do that. And I feel like that's an area that a lot of people struggle with as well is, they get out of a relationship and they immediately go right into the next one. There's never a time of thought-provoking self-reflection or, looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, hey, what could I do better? So for example, for myself, like I have been single for over a year now. And I know you and I have chatted in the past about, after your last relationship ended, you traveled, you did a lot of different things, and you really kind of dug deep and did a lot of soul searching. You and I had chatted about different business ventures. We chatted about travel. We chatted about you starting a podcast. We chatted about how, you can have more of an impact and how you can do more good in the world and all these different deep things that most people never even think about. And it was clear that, like, over the past year chatting with you time on and time off again, that you really wanted to find a way to take whatever metaphorical sword you were holding and make it as sharp as you possibly could for the next big thing. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with in today's day and age. And I'm far from perfect at it myself, but essentially making sure that you yourself are as good of a version of you as you can be. So when that right person does come along, or, maybe a couple wrong ones and then the right one, you're as good as you can be instead of just like the same person who's made the same mistakes and still hasn't learned anything.
I love that. That's huge. Everything you said resonates so closely because you have seen this whole journey and you've been following along, and I really appreciate that. Like, I think how I like to have kind of pictures in my head as to what's going on. And I think in this case, it's like, if you can imagine a void, like when you go through a breakup, when something ends that was important to you, there's this void in your soul. And it's like, this needs to be filled. Like, I feel empty. I feel like I'm missing a part of myself. And I think since the last time we talked to now, from doing things like therapy, reading the right books, like going and just doing life the way that I wanted to, and saying, I'm not reporting to anyone. I'm just doing me. I moved provinces. I got a new job. I took my career into my own hands. And I didn't even go on these apps. I just was like, I need to focus on me. It's almost like, do whatever you need to do, whether it's travel, whether it's a meditation retreat, whatever it is, fill that void yourself. Don't rely on someone else to fill that void. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I met my new partner, I was not ready. I'm like, no, my void isn't filled yet. Like, I need to keep going. I need to continue to do my self growth. Like, I was starting 6 months of travel, and that was going to be my solo travel. Now him and I are planning Rome Airbnbs together. And I'm like, no, this was not the plan, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Do you know what I mean? And it goes back to that outcome thing where it's like, forget the timeline. The timeline is irrelevant. Just do what you can. I would say try to take time. Like, take time after a big breakup to just don't go on the apps. Like, I'm saying this as I started a 51st date series a month after my breakup. In hindsight, I would have given myself more time, but what I'm saying is, like, you really can't predict what's going to happen. And with my new boyfriend now, I said, look, I'm actually still processing not processing, but there's parts of me that weren't ready for this. And I was about to start 6 months of travel on my own to continue the self-growth journey. And I just said, like, to him, I'm like, you got to be patient with me as I work through this. And as I'm with him, and as we're kind of building this new relationship together, I've learned, Dan, that you almost need a person to kind of help you through it. And you reach a point in your self-growth journey where it's actually beneficial to get with someone new. But don't, like we said with the Venn diagram, everything's coming full circle now, pun fully intended, with the Venn diagram. It's like you have to maintain those parts of your self-growth journey, and never let go of these things that are making you feel 100% like you are living the life that's true to yourself. But sometimes it's beneficial to have a person to help you along that journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'll even take it a step further and say you're never going to be 100% ready.
Yes.
Regardless of how much time or prep you put in, it's never 100%, and that's true for any endeavor in life. You're never 100% of the way there. Eventually, you just kind of have to take that leap of faith. But as we've talked about, if you find the right person with the right things, they'll jump with you and they'll help you build, the metaphorical airplane on the way off the cliff. And then the two of you can fly away together and live happily ever after, however the story goes from there.
Exactly. And I think, and my biggest advice, and this is like a thing that, it's a quote, it's a mantra that I think people hold in the dating world, is like, it always happens when you're not ready. It always happens when you least expect it, right? Like, I don't know, I actually haven't told him this yet, but I don't know if he's listening to the pod. But the reason I went on this date with this guy who I'm with now was because I was actually seeing someone for 8 months. And I was like, then that 8-month situationship ghosted me and ended weirdly. And I'm like, I just need to go on a random fun date. I was not expecting a relationship out of that, right? And so it happens when you have that energy where you least expect it, and you're maybe not fully ready, but everything is unfolding in the way that it should. If you can fully believe in your heart, like, everything is unfolding in the timing that it should. Doesn't matter if you weren't ready. Doesn't matter if you weren't planning to meet your person in January and it happens anyways. Who cares? Do it for the plot.
Do it for the plot. I love that. And ultimately, I think a lot of things can get figured out with time. Like, if it's meant to be, it'll find a way to be. And people will move, people will relocate, and people might give up certain parts of themselves, not all of themselves, but parts of themselves, in order to make it work. Small sacrifices for the bigger picture. And I'm certainly not quite as eloquent when it comes to this as you are, Bree. I certainly don't have nearly as many first dates, especially in the last year, as you do. But ultimately, I think that, the dating world, as beautiful as it can be a little pain sometimes, but it is ultimately what moves our needle of life forward into, the next chapter, and keeps the pages of our book turning.
Yeah. You're saying you're not eloquent, but you just totally Shakespearean that last that last part there. No, Dan, you have so many great perspectives, and it's always a wonderful chat. Like, it's just even talking to someone about it. Like we have these thoughts, we feel so in our own world, but I just love what you're doing, like sharing these perspectives and talking about it. Like it's the content that I post about dating absolutely blows up every time. People want to talk about this. You're so right. Relationships and connections with people is when you strip everything away in life, that's really all we have.
It
Is
is.
something that's
It
never
is.
going away either.
Speaking of relationships with people here, Bree, say someone's listening today and they're like, I got to know more about this Bree girl. I got to keep up with her life. Or, hey, I actually heard she's doing some travel abroad. I want to travel with her. Where
Yeah.
can people find out more about you, who you are, what you're doing, that sort of thing?
Totally. And you caught me at a weird time where I'm about to change my handle probably next week. But for now, it's Bree Woolard. So BreeWoolard. It's my full name. I think I'm gonna change it to Let's Bree Real. I don't know.
I love that.
I'm
I
playing
love that.
I'm playing around with that one. So depending on when the pod is released, just put whatever one I've got going at the time. I'm sorry you're meeting at this crazy time where I'm transitioning, but yeah, I'm traveling. I'm getting on a flight to Portugal on Monday, and it's what is it? Friday? It's Saturday right now. In 2 days. Portugal, Spain, Italy, France. A lot of that will be kind of on my own. Some of it will be with my new boyfriend. So lots of exciting content coming up. I just want to keep living and sharing and providing a more authentic, vulnerable voice than that's out there. So that's kind of what I'm all about.
I love that. I love that. It's a big window of transparency, if you will, and that's something I give you a lot of credit for, Bree. Is you seem to definitely, I know we talked about it before, but you seem to be at a point in life where you're very comfortable sharing anything and everything with people. And that's something that I think we all need a little bit more of in today's day and age.
Well, I appreciate that. No, I'm just doing my best, and I get scared too sometimes. Like I'm a real person. I get nervous to post these things. I don't know what I'm doing half the time, but it's like people just want to feel like they're relating to someone, and I just want to try to be the most relatable I can, and just to have like a best friend. My kind of tagline is like your internet bestie. Like I just want to be like a friend. Like I just want to be people who don't have that person to talk to. So yeah.
That's what you're there for. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, Bree. It is always good chatting and catching up with you. Really appreciate your time and everything you shared with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. If you liked this episode, please make sure to share it with a friend, subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes, and leave a review. This way we can spread knowledge and motivation and help reach more people. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.